Hi everyone, this is my second video in a series of 3 videos, and hopefully some other updates as happens in the classroom or in the library where I'm doing an after-school program. And this series is basically, it started with the gear that I use for an after-school program, and that's another video, and I don't know how to do that crap. So you can find it on my channel. Uh, and and so here I am, and my dogs are gonna bark. Yes, I've got another dog. I don't know how to pop that up quickly, but anyway, we've got another dog, and it's a Great Pyrenees, uh, Tibetan Mastiff mix. I think it will be as heavy as I am. So anyway, this is a video about the gameplay that I've had with the kids. And so, again, the first one was about gear, what you need. It's fairly specific to Mutant Year Zero, but it can apply to everything. And it shows you an Excel spreadsheet that I'm going to show you here as well. That's just going to kind of tweak my brain and remind me of some things. I have my tablet or iPad in front of me, and I'm looking at the Dance of Dreams. I've been calling it the Witch Cat Inn, but it's officially called the Dance of Dreams, and it is the core book gameplay. And I haven't really watched any gameplay that I can remember about the Dance of Dreams. I know that I have, but my memory is shot. So, it's all new to me. So anyway, this is my first group. So I'm going to describe the first group to you so that you're aware of who the people are, who the characters are, so that you can understand. And this is basically to show you how I dealt with the introduction to the game, introduction to Castle Griffin Krauts, and how it played out with the kids and what they did. Now, I'll go between kids and youth. I mean, no disrespect that they're kids, but they're youth, and I'll call them guys. And there's 2 girls in this particular group that I'm going to be talking about this in this video. So, no offense. I'm just it's just my excitement, and I am excited. I get so much pleasure and fun helping the kids to learn about role playing, learn about new systems. Everybody hears about D&D, but and that's great, but there are systems out there that I think are much more kid friendly and also better for the imagination. And I'll explain this as I talk about this video. It probably will be long, so just prepare yourselves. And you can take this in chunks and just save it or whatever. But let's dig in. So, what we have is we have a very shy girl in school, exceedingly shy, has a speech impediment that can be hard to understand her, but she is quite amazing. She's playing the Countess, and she playing the Countess is she's wealthy. Her character has evolved a lot as she's been playing her. Her name is Alice Villiers, but everybody refers to her as the Countess. Nobody really refers to her as Alice. And I've tried to impress upon the kids that this is the late-ish 19th century. So we're dealing with a period of time where there's enough technology, trains, carrier pigeons as technology, and the telegraph. There is, of course, as a very important element of the game is the transition of the Industrial Revolution and what that means for the rural communities as well as for the cities, and this changing nature and its effect on Vaesen. So, she's a countess, very wealthy. She's a socialite, and she's petulant, determined, and comes across as spoiled. I don't know if the person playing this character imagined her to be this way, but this is how she has embodied this character. And as one of the shyest people in the school, the principal and teacher have said to me how funny and amazing it is to see what she's doing. And you're going to feel the same way once you hear about the Countess. The Madam. The Madam is played by a very smart young lady. She is very witty, very clever. She's very good in school, very good reader, and a very quick learner. She is playing the Madam, Valentina Mork. They all chose their names. Valentina Mork. She is 26. She's an established occultist and medium, and she's come across as being kind of the level-headed one in the group, and yet she also likes to get into trouble. And she likes to get into she likes other people to get into trouble more than she likes to get into trouble, and I'll explain that soon enough. So then there is the professor. Now the professor's been missing a bit, and there's just some kind of issues that I'm finding out whether or not this person is going to continue to play or not. It's an issue of being part of an after-school program and not being able to, parents not feeling comfortable with the individual going home alone. And so the professor is Louis Brugge, and he's 41, and he's been unnaturally aged by 10 years. He's a professor and an academic. And he is he's quite shy, very bookish, and is and it's a shame that he hasn't been more part of the group, because I think he brings a lot to this character, but the character hasn't been as fleshed out as I had hoped because of his absence. The last individual is the butler. Now, the butler, as I said in my previous video, began as a vagabond, and his name is Rolf Eriksson. He's 19 years old. The Countess found him on the streets, showed him pity, gave him money, and trusted this individual. He didn't like the idea of the vagabond and the idea of stealing to live or having those type of skill sets. And so he was very shy as a person to play that type of character. And so we sat down after the second or third kind of session, just before the beginning of the official kind of moving forward from the castle. And just so you know, spoilers abound. So spoilers abound. If you don't want to know anything about the Dance of Dreams, don't watch this. If you are interested as a GM, especially and particularly about running it with young people, continue as you were. So he became a butler because I thought that might be a nice transition. She's helped you out as a vagabond. Now you've moved from a vagabond to a butler. So I did kind of a bit of an upgrade, kept some vagabond elements, and also moved him into that butler situation. You'll hear my dogs barking in the background. So that's the characters. That's the setup. This guy who's playing the butler is gets into trouble in school by being kind of questioning kind of everything. Possibly challenging authority. Not probably the most popular young person, and I wouldn't say that any of these kids would be the most popular in their classes, though I must say that as a school, the principal, who I know very well, this is a remarkable school, and and their staff and they produce wonderful kids and really work with them very well from a school perspective. And so I just think that they're great. Um, and so there isn't a lot of cliques. Remember, everybody in like they've known each other since they were born. Essentially, it's that small of a community, and so they've been in class like forever with each other, unless they're an import who's relatively just moved in. And there's not a lot of cases of that. So this young person who is playing the butler is as I've described, and yet has shown a lot of respect and has been absolutely very good at the table, and has shown himself to be very mature in the way that he's taken this subservient role to this extremely shy young lady playing the countess. So there's a lot of dynamics at play, and these were characters that they chose. I didn't give them even a suggestion. They just chose what they wanted to be. Now the countess comes from uh, I believe mythic Britain. Yeah. So I think that the characters that we have are from mythic Britain, and I forget how many of them are from that book. Just let me make absolutely. Well, I know that. Okay, so we have the entertainer, which nobody has, the socialite, which is who this young lady, Alice Villiers, is, and the athlete is in the other group. And that person is Jack Grace, but we're not going to talk about him now. So, I started off with them kind of just going through the concept of a six-sided dice. You get a six, and that's it. So I'm playing with the Vaesen dice. The Vaesen dice have a particular mark on them that identifies it as different from the other dice. And I can just show you an example if you're unfamiliar. So that's the six. And I just find these are beautiful, beautiful dice. They're like bone. They're almost like they feel and look in a lot of ways like the old Monopoly dice that you'd get in the 50s and the 60s. Just a very beautiful dice. And I think that out of all of the free league dice, this is my favorite. And I'm trying to remember what the cat Catalyst 9. No, somebody's going to correct me in the bottom comments, but This is the dice for the One Ring, but the previous dice. So this is the current dice. Let me just get a black one here. All right, so this is the current 6 for the One Ring. So hard to see for me. This is the current Free League dice, the 6 for the One Ring. This is the 6 for the previous edition. Okay, and I forget who published this, but I I believe that this is one of the most beautiful six-sided die that I own. I absolutely love that, but it's second, absolutely second to the Vaesen dice, which I think are absolutely fantastic. And if you're wondering about others, here's the 6 on the Forbidden Lands. Okay, so this is 6 for the Forbidden Lands. There's you've got different colors. It's an excellent system. I'm not going to get into it. This is the 6 for Alien. If you can see that, I like these. The 6 for Tales from the Loop, and the 6 for Coriolis. But it's just, I have a set. I think I have an extra set coming, but I don't find them as kind of. I prefer these for Coriolis. And I actually have ordered some Mutant Year Zero dice. I'm not sure how I feel about Mutant Year Zero World, but I like the dice. So I'm a bit of a dice slut. All right, so there's my dice. Now, getting to the game. So they've got used to the dice. I tried to explain things to them as we were setting up the characters. I helped them understand that they've got the 4 skills or they have the 4 attributes, and then they've got the skills. And it's really important for them to understand that the skills are as they are, and that even though they're specific, use your imagination. Don't just look down a list and say, this is what I want to play. So they've been very, very good about that. They did choose where they wanted to place their emphasis. They did understand how to place the 2 to the 4 and then the 5 for the primary attribute. So they understood that very quickly. Skills were a little harder for them to understand in terms of, you could do a 1 or a 2 or nothing. And with your main attribute, you can put a 3. So they got it, but it took them a little bit more, and they still are learning that you add the attribute to the skill, and that's how many dice you roll. But it was a fairly easy transition for them. So we've got these characters, and they are just filled with a lot of color and a lot of just so much thought has been put in by the kids. So we're going to switch to a different screen so that I can show you kind of their characters and who they are. And I'm going to describe to you how it unfolded as you're able to look at this kind of spreadsheet and myself. So here we are. I'm going to move it up a bit. There we go. And so now they all have a good relationship with each other, and I don't think that I can easily manipulate this enough so that you can see, but essentially if you look down here, you'll see that and it's looking across. So the Countess has a good relationship, useful. So the first indicator is what the individual thinks of the other characters, and the second is how they met. So the Countess found the madam is useful, helped her, and how did she help? Well, if you look down at the madam healed her with poultices and stuff like that. So she is jealous of the wealth that the Countess has, and I think that that was very mature of the individual playing it. The Countess sees the butler or the professor as smart, and they met while dancing. And again, with the butler, she trusts the butler so much that she made him her butler. Now, they're both 19 years old, so it's a weird relationship, but he he's trying to be a butler, and I think that it's nice that he's a young butler trying to be a butler with all the respect and all that he's supposed to do as a butler. But as an individual playing a character, he's kind of ignorant of what needs to be done and what isn't done in proper society at that period of time, the late 19th century. So it's nice because he doesn't know. And it's amazing at how much they don't know about that period of time. It's one thing to play in a D&D fantasy world where you can anything goes, but to place it in a particular period of time, you're actually teaching history, you're teaching about pigeons and carrier pigeons and stuff like that. So it's amazing at how the young people are learning about the development of the Industrial Revolution and the impact on society. And so this is great. Now, this particular story of Dance of Dreams is not as affected as Summer in December, which is my next video. So you'll see here that also the madam believes that the professor is knowledgeable, doesn't really have a particular idea about him, just knows that she's gone to him to find out more about Vaesen. Now, none of them knew each other, and none of them knew that each other knew about Vaesen, and the same is true for the other group. The other group were friends. This group has kind of met by happenstance. The madam went to the professor to find books on the occult and learn more about this raven that affects her. The professor thinks that she's strange, and she read his fortune, and she succeeded so well that she actually knows that he was affected by a mermaid, that so he's affected by a mermaid. He's addicted to Vaesen now and feels a compelling desire to go toward the Vaesen whenever there's a Vaesen present. And so this is going to play out very well if this character continues to play. And so then you've got the madam looking at the butler. Now, the butler has a revenant's finger. And so because he has the revenant's finger, if you look at the line called Memento, heal a condition, you'll see that the revenant and then luck +1. So it can either give him an extra dice for luck, or it can heal a condition. So it's up to him as to how he uses that revenant's finger. And I just thought that that was a nice way of kind of interplaying that in that system. So she's curious about the finger that he has and how he acquired it and stuff like that. The professor looks at the Countess as being rich. He thinks that the Countess is, or the Madam is strange. Really likes the butler, and is keen on the butler. The butler sees the Countess as being kind. She's helped him. There's a mystery that he feels is about the madam, and he knows that she's interested in the finger and has been asking him questions about it. And of course, she trusts, or Rolf, the character, has trusted the professor, and that he provides him with info about various Vaesen. So they all have kind of interacted with each other, asking questions about Vaesen, but not knowing the exact situation. So once again, we look at the motivation and some of these things. So we've got a socialite, an occultist, an academic, and a vagabond. I've described their personalities as individuals, playing characters, and their characters as they've evolved. And also that the motivation for Alice, or for the Countess, is protect the estate. Her trauma was she was attacked by a ghost, and she's an illegitimate heir. Valentina Mork, the occultist and madam, was attacked by a raven. Her motivation is to figure out how this raven has affected her, and that her powers control her. For Louis Brugge, we can see that the professor is addicted to Vaesen and was aged by a mermaid, should be 31, now 41. And he's, of course, an academic. And then you've got Rolf, the butler. And he wants to be liked as his motivation. The revenants, he saw a revenant rise from the dead. And he honestly believes that Vaesen kill the ones he loves. And so I have, as I described in my previous video, how the effects work for me mechanically. Every one of them, when they went shopping, wanted to buy stuff like pets. I was not having everybody have a dog. No. And then they started talking about cats. So, Alice has a homing pigeon. Frisk got all this for them. So I know I'm jumping ahead. Frisk got everything. And then we have the falcon, a hunting falcon. And that's the Countess's pet. And then the hunting dog for the butler. He spent time training the dog, and so therefore got it upgraded to a hunting dog instead of what a vagabond would have had. So that's why it's a hunting dog. And then the professor has nothing. So you can see their stats. I'm not going to go over their stats. You're going to see their stats because they're going to be up all the time. You'll see that Alice took the talent of wealthy, the medium observation, bookworm for the professor, and tough as nails for the butler. Then you'll see that the momentums are rolled. Unique map, worn bone dice, musical box, and Revenant's finger. And as I said, it can either give +1 luck, or it can heal a condition. The advantages that they took, and remember, this took 2 sessions to kind of get all of this rolled up. Alice was practicing shooting at Castle Grillenkrautz. Valentina was making medicinal herbs, going out into the overgrown garden of the castle and gathering up some medicinal herbs. Sorry, my nose always invariably gets itchy when I'm doing a video. Reading on the region that they were going to, and Rolf spent time training Siren, which is the dog, and that's how it got pumped up. So, now I'm just going to talk about the characters. And you can see down below, their resources, basically what they did is they rolled, they pooled their resources, they bought different things for each other. Alice has a pistol and the cage. Valentina started with the orb and the crock pot or the cook pot, Instapot. She's got herbs and she bought bandages. The professor has bandages, has a rifle, and a map book. Rolf has a revolver, a crowbar, and and a hurricane lamp. So that's basically what they bought, and that's what they have. So, and I am not sure, but I think Valentina has the madam has a pistol, but I'm not sure. I'd have to check that. Because I don't think that it's on this sheet. It might be on. It's on her character sheet, and this is new, and I haven't transferred everything over. All right, so um, I'm gonna get out of this section. Actually, I'm gonna go back to my big window so that I can talk to you. Our first session basically was we got together and we they got together in the square just outside of the church as a meeting area, and then uh, they there was there was a person who came up to them who was Frisk, who didn't introduce himself in any way, but gave them two letters. One was an invitation to go to meet Linnea, and the other was not to be opened until they saw Linnea. They didn't open it. They had no interest in opening it. They were shocked enough that they were supposed to go to the asylum. So they all went to the asylum, described it as dark and dreary. I've worked in a psychiatric hospital before, so I gave some very, I asked them, I said, how comfortable are your parents going to be with 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 how dark this could get. And I was very serious in asking them initially what kind of is allowed and what isn't allowed. And remember, I've also got to think as an adult, looking at a bunch of kind of pre-14-year-olds, you know, what is appropriate, what isn't appropriate. We didn't do any checks. We didn't do any kind of red cards or anything like that. I was not going to get into that stuff with them. I thought, if I'm not being a good GM, then I shouldn't be doing this. Okay, so I needed to weigh what was appropriate, what wasn't. I spoke to the principal about what was appropriate, what wasn't, and I did ask the kids what would shock your parents, and so I got some boundaries. But describing the psychiatric hospital as it would have been, and in my mind, I was working with the image of what I've learned about the asylum that Van Gogh was in. And so it was that type of mixture of that and my personal experience, the smells of urine, the people who are not medicated because there wasn't the medication, the starkness of restraints and of the darkness of the color of the walls and the darkness of the windows and just the sad atmosphere. So they were very much right away enveloped in this darkness. They went into Linnea's room. Linnea was very open about the fact that each of them had the site. They were open to this. And then what I did is I read that. I read not verbatim, but I read pretty much the chapter that describes how the history of the society, the two different groups, also the fact that the three people, um, uh, three or four, forget off the top of my head, I think it's three, who were the survivors of the death of the 100 who were going after the giant Vaesen. up in the north. And so I described all of this to them so that they had a session of context. So they had 2 sessions of development of characters. Remember, I've only got an hour and a half, a little bit less. And then we did that. So that's 3 sessions so far. The 4th session was and so they opened up. She said she lost her mind for a little bit, and then she got coherent again, and she said, "This is for you." And I said there were 8 places, and you are to sign your name here, 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 and here. And there were names that they didn't recognize underneath that were to sign the the ownership of Castle Gillenkrauts. So they didn't sign it there. Linnea told her that this is, this will be your headquarters. You're going to bring back the society. And next session, we were in Castle Gillenkrauts. So Frisk brings them in. We describe the scene, how everything's broken down, the jetty. They needed to know what a jetty was. I described the hill, described and showed the picture of everything. So they saw the castle. They saw the, I forget if they're griffins or if they were, I don't know what the statues were off the top of my head, but they went in, they had the atmosphere. I said that everything was broken down with the pails and the dripping and all that stuff, that the paint was peeling or the I think at the time I described it as being wallpaper was peeling and that they then went into a room straight ahead underneath a banistered kind of staircase that goes up to a second floor that kind of looks down on them. They go into this room, and it is immaculate and in perfect shape, and it has a long table that seats about 12. Frisk was there, bringing them in, and then in the darkness there was a lawyer. So the lawyer came out. The lawyer notarized after they signed ownership, and they were all surprised and stuff. They didn't think they'd get a castle, and so they were really excited as kids. And then what I did was said, okay, what do you want to buy? And so we went through the cost of things, how economics works in the game, how you roll, how you've got money that's in your, you know, savings account, as it were, that you can use. And they got it pretty quickly. It was a good experience for them. So there's a session right there. And of course they receive the letter that invites them by Olas. So Olas says, "Hey, get over here." And so I give them the handout of the play that's going to be put on, and they're invited to this place. So the next session, excuse me, I don't I have nothing in there. It's just, I don't know what the reaction is. Anyway, so we go in the 5th session now. I think it's the 5th. And we travel on the road in the pouring rain to the Witch Cat Inn. They have their stuff. I've read you their stuff. They've got all this thing, and they go it. So, they go in, and I describe it as being nighttime. It's pouring rain, and for them, it's fall. The light goes down very, very early. Remember, this is the northern hemisphere, and it's a far northern hemisphere. The sun goes down much earlier in the Uppsala region than it does than it does anywhere else. And so I describe kind of what is set out in the core in terms of how far away the church is, that they can just see but kind of not see. That there's like a break in the clouds and the moon shines down and they can see kind of an ornate steeple a few kilometers away over the trees in the darkness. So anyway, they arrive and they enter in. Now, I spent a lot of time with Sammy being just an asshole, screaming, yelling, berating, just a violent, angry guy. And I probably did ask them if, like after after the second session with Frisk and the buying of stuff, I probably did ask them, you know, how like you know how much violence and stuff are you able to handle? And so I didn't ignore red cards and veils and lines, but I figured that I would get a sense very quickly looking around the table if anyone showed any discomfort, because of course I don't know their family lives. I don't know what goes on in their young minds. And so I have to be, as a GM, very attentive to the potential of triggers. Okay. So I don't feel that myself, as an after school person, asking a young person what their psychological traumas are or their potential sexual issues are, that's just off the table. So I have to judge. So violent guy. And they got that right off the bat. And, here he is treating, and I'm just going to fast forward so that I go over to the names so that I remember. So he's treating Ingley horrifically. Okay, he's screaming and yelling at Sven, who is the waiter, to get that dog out of there. He's screaming and yelling at them, and then he sees the Countess. And then he changes his mood to being, oh, shit, this might actually pay off some stuff. So I gave the Countess, the player playing the Countess, this idea that she has a lot more power than she thinks. And remember, this is from the principal's perspective, one of the most shy people in the school, one of the most shyest girl, and I can tell just she blushes when she needs to do something, and so anyway. So they sit down for dinner after the dog goes over to the place, and they go upstairs and they put all their stuff in their rooms, and the rooms. So I didn't have that PDF that somebody did of the Witch Cat Inn, and I now have it, and so I can kind of show people where they are and what rooms they received. I don't think the Countess is in the best room, and I really don't want to take it back at the moment, so I'm not sure if I'm going to show their rooms. I may just show Nora's room. So what essentially happened was the four of them were downstairs ordering, and Olas is trying to pressurize them to say, you have the site, I have the site, you have the site, you have the site, don't you? You have the site, don't you? And so everybody says yes. And at the table, I have the butler, the professor, I have the madam, and then I have the Countess. So the Countess is across from the butler, and I have the girls on one side, and I have the boys on the other side. And that's just because one of the boys started to lean over on the table and look at the map and all this stuff. And I just thought that I got a sense that it was a little bit awkward for the girl to have him leaning over her. And so I kind of separated them into two groups. You got to be aware of these type of things. So anyway, so this is where the fun begins. It's taken us 45 minutes. So, the it's great. So Olas is there. You have the you goes to the countess and says, "You have the sight, don't you?" And she says, "No." And I'm like, "Okay, roll manipulation." So essentially, she wins the manipulation roll, and by and I was really shocked by this. I said to her, as she failed the first roll, I said, "Do you want to push the roll?" And they all understood that if they push it, they're going to get a condition. So she said yes. And so she succeeded. I think she got 2 or 3 successes. So, so she was determined. And I said, well, what do you want to say to Olas? You know, what do you want to say? And this was, I think, I think she rolled and I didn't have it a roll off. I think what I did is I had hers initially roll and then tell him, and then I had him roll to see if he believed her. Okay. So I said, "What do you say to him? You really don't you're angry now and you're responding in anger." And she was like, really, as a person, she was really afraid to say this. I said, "You can say anything you want." And she was like, "Anything?" And the person next to her, the madam, is like, "Yeah, like, oh." And she's like egging her on, which is a recurrent theme. And so she's egging her on, and she says in the quietest way, "Shut up." and so I said, "And you tell him to shut up, and you bang your hand on the table, because you have to. They don't know how to role play. You have to assist them so that they build up the confidence to be able to role play, right? You're not going to expect them to know all of these things." So anyway, she bangs. So I bang. She bangs her hand on the table. I say, "Shut up." So anyway, she started to get a little bit bolder, and she said, "Yeah, shut up. I don't have the sight." And she just had lived a little bit, not a lot, but enough that she was just beaming as a person. And so anyway, I rolled him, and he got the same amount of successes. And so I said that he doesn't believe you. And so she, on her own, decided to get up from the table and stomp off and go up to her room. Now, this had implications. This had very serious implications. So there's still this kind of screaming and yelling from the kitchen. It's not as pronounced, but he's still being the jerk. They interact with the people around the tables. And I'm not going to get into that because it really wasn't very interesting. They did. I think that the madam noticed that there was something going on with Lisa. The professor recognized her from the university, seeing her around, thinking that she was in either physics or chemistry or something like that in a lab coat, but didn't know exactly what department she was in. I'm still keeping this mentality that this is a fairly large university for its time, and yes, it's a relatively small community, but there has to be some type of distance. He's an academic who kind of swallows himself up in his work, so I didn't want him to be too familiar with Lisa. The priest was the priest doing his regular serious stuff, kind of chuckling at the jokes, but not. I had the farmer, kind of larger than life, jovial, in opposition to Sammy, right? So Olas is pissed off. The Countess, she's gone upstairs. And before she's gone upstairs, the butler goes upstairs to put something away. I think I forget exactly why he separated, but he went upstairs and he followed Sophia. So he goes up with Sophia, and Sophia shows him a lot of different kind of things. Shows him the, you know, the kind of lay of the land, and he's like, well, what room is this? And so she says, he knows all the rooms where each of the characters are. This is, this is the ladder that goes up to my, my performance. I'm going to have a performance tonight. You're here to see it. And she's all excited, but she's very shy, and she has this kind of Pattern syndrome. So she's very worried about saying anything. And so she she leads him toward downstairs, and he asks about this room, which looks longer than all the other ones because of the way the staircase goes. And she says that's her mother's room, and nobody goes in it. Nobody's gone in it for so long. My father's never opened it up. And so, don't go in there because it's not, nobody goes in there. So they end up going downstairs as the Countess is coming upstairs in her anger. The butler just decides to go downstairs, doesn't ask what's going on. She goes to her room. So they interact with all the people and stuff, and then it's another session. So the other session has them interact a little bit more, and then the countess, or the madam, says, "I'm going to go upstairs and check on the countess." So I go thumbs up, and this is where uh, the professor is no longer part of the group. So he's missed like 2 or 3 sessions. So so I just imagine that he's gone to his room as well. So I'm trying not to say their real names. So Valentina goes upstairs as the madam, goes into the room of Alice, the countess, and asks if she's okay. And I said that women of this age, like of this period of time, would walk around arm in arm. And I'm giving them kind of clues about society at the time. And I said there's nothing to read into that. It's just something that they would do, that you'd promenade. And so the madam says to the countess, let's stroll to make you feel better, and you'll be able to breathe and stuff. So anyway, so the countess goes on a stroll with the madam, and they're going strolling, and they go around, and they tell me I'm checking all the rooms. So they're checking the rooms, and the room that is empty, they open it up, it's empty. I described that it looks terrible, that there's, that the ceiling's leaking and all this stuff. So they go around, and they know that the other rooms belong to the other people. And so they ignore those rooms. They they forget that there's Sophia's room, and they go to Nora's room. So they go to Nora's room, and they try the lock, and the lock is locked. And so anyway, the madam says we've got to get in there. And so anyway, she tries to use force to get in there. It doesn't work. And she's trying to figure out a way to get in there. Well, I broke away, went downstairs, said, "What are you guys doing?" And or to because it was just the butler downstairs. I forget if I had. Actually, I forget. I think I may have had him go to the toilet, not the other guy, but the character. The See, I can't remember him because he hasn't been around for so long. The professor. So the professor, I think, went to the washroom and was kind of just around, but not playing, right? So the butler decides to go upstairs to check on the women. So he comes upstairs, and uh, and so I'm thinking, what's going on downstairs? What's happening? Well, in my mind, and I haven't told them any of this, I'm trying to think like a GM. What's happening in the world? So Sven has taken back the dishes, and Sven gives the full plate of food untouched to Sammy. Sammy demands to know who didn't eat their meal, and Sven reluctantly says the Countess. Well, all shit hits the fan, and and he starts beating on Lisa and screaming and yelling. So there's so much screaming and yelling in my mind that they don't hear the attempt to break into the door. Well, the butler comes upstairs. What are you doing? Now, he's really anxious about this situation and says, you can't go in there. And they say, why not? I can't tell you. And and then all of a sudden, this shy girl is there going, why can't you tell me? Tell me. Now, she doesn't know or doesn't remember that he's been told not to tell. Actually, come to think of it, they actually role played really, really well because she really acted as if if both of the girls didn't act as if they remembered why he would say no. So he says, no, I can't. No, you can't go in there. I can't let you go in there. And so all of a sudden, without any prompting from me, this shy girl says to the butler, you're going to open that door. I'm going to force him to open the door, she says. So I have them roll off together. So they roll off together. So this was the end of the session. They roll off together. And she forces him on the first roll, in her anger, forces him to tell her why and to break down the door. And he didn't win. And she was just absolutely tickled. So he busted down the door. And so I rolled to see if anybody downstairs would have heard over the noise and the commotion. Nobody heard. And you'll see here, there, that I actually live in a 18th century house, a late 18th century house, and I have all of my doorknobs are these very old, 230 plus years old doors. And so I know how they look. I know how they operate. And so I said, you broke the door in, and that this part there has come off, but the doorknob is still intact with the line of the doorknob inside. So you can close it behind you so that it won't look as if anybody's in the room. So that's where we left off. And of course, she went to the principal on her way out and told her what happened and stuff. And I mean, this is twice that she's been extremely bold. So we get to the last session that we played. Last week was canceled. So the last session that we played, the madam is... so we've only got the three characters. We've got the butler, we've got the madam, and we have the countess, all in this dark room. Now, looking at the image that's on the PDF that I got off of Drive-Thru on the Witch Cat Inn, and I really, if you're going to play this, use it. It's really, really good. A dark, but really, really good. Like dark as in, you have to brighten it up a bit if you want a little more, but I think that it gives a good ambiance. Anyway, the room and the shape of the room is very long, and so you know where the door is, you know where the window is, and the only thing wrong was I had the bed facing the window, so your head would wake up looking outside the window, but in the drawing it's lengthwise, and it's not, authoritative. It just is what it is. But so I had actually, Actually, I had the bed up against the window, facing away from the window, so that your feet were, so that your head would look toward the door. Her desk was at the far end of the hall next to the stairs going down, and then she had a bureau or a uh, oh, what do you call them? Like a cupboard, but it's not a cupboard. It's a stand-up thing, and at the moment, my brain is not operating. It's not a credenza. It's a damn it. We used to have one of them too. Anyway, it's like a big box, and it's a storage cabinet for clothes and stuff. So anyway, it's yeah. You know, someone will type it down below. All right. So anyway, so they have this, and it's enough so that it fits the clothes in, but if you really needed to, you could go in there and fit. So they're in there. It's dark, dark, dark. And I say it's really dark. So anyway, they go out and they each grab a candle. And I'm imagining that the hall has 3 candles in each of its sconces. I can remember the word sconce. I can't remember the name of a box that holds clothes. Anyway, so it's not a dresser because that's, it's anyway, so they take the candles off the sconces and they go in and they're looking around. So, Madam, first thing, he tells her that Nora has occult books. Beeline to the books. She's at the end of the hall. The butler is looking at the end of the bed and looking around, just kind of keeping an eye out, looking outside, seeing if they can see outside. And uh, and the madam is at the door. The door is closed. Now, spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. You've been warned. So, boom. All of a sudden, Oscar shows up. And the way I describe it is that there's a tingling sensation that all of them have. That they all start tingling. That the madam recognizes what that feeling is. The others do not. She recognizes something within, and they roll their fear roll. Well, poor Butler doesn't pass his fear roll at all and ends up being frozen. And he ends up being frozen for 5 rounds. So he's out of the game. He's like just standing there still. The madam passes her fear roll, and the countess passes her fear roll. And so, spoiler, spoiler, spoiler. The mechanism is now you pass on a a kind of direction for how you're going to play this element of the game. And so it's called Enthralled. And the way I did it was I just rolled a 6-sided dice and I divided it by 3. So I pointed and said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I rolled a 1. So I gave this young lady, this shy, shy, shy young lady, the enthralled description. I said, "How's your reading?" She said, "Good." I said, "You go out of the room or go out of the library and you go and you read this. And if you're having any trouble, you go to the principal or go to the secretary and have them kind of describe it. When you come back, if you need me, wave outside the window and I'll come and talk to you about it. But otherwise, come back and I want you to play that role." Okay, so enthralled is a vengeful creature has taken control of your body for a few moments. You think the other player characters are responsible for a terrible crime committed against you, and you want to kill them. Perhaps this is reflected in your breathing, your posture. Try to build a scary atmosphere by portraying how your character has changed. You might tell the other characters you hate them and that none of them will leave the inn alive. You draw your weapon and attack one of them. After one round of combat, the creature loses control of your body. Well, she waved. And so I played. Well, obviously, the butler can't do anything, and I just kind of was like, well, poor you, sucks to be you. And I felt bad for the guy because he's really been playing his role really well. And considering that he's subservient to the Countess, he's really taken it well. I didn't expect from the description that I had of the young man that he would be able to take this type of situation well. And he's just going with it and playing awesome. So he was fine. Uh, Madam finds a whole whack load of books. I think she rolled a 5 on how many books she was able to steal. Takes them all out, shoves them in her her bag, and and so that's going on while the Countess is out trying to figure out how am I going to role play this. So anyway, I go out and we're very far away from the other two, and I say, well, look, what are you going to do? I said, you have this feeling that they're going to kill you, and so you must kill them. And I said, so on a 1, 2, and 3, you'll do the madam, and on a 4, 5, and 6, you'll attack your butler. I said, will you'll role play this, and you'll describe how you change and what your look is like, and maybe you'll accuse them and point your finger and stuff. So I gave her some direction, but she didn't. She seemed to get it, but she didn't seem to get it, and I think that she was overwhelmed with the fact that she had to figure out a way to attack them. So I said, well, what are you going to do? She said, well, I have my pistol. I said, no, you don't. It's in your room. And she said, oh yeah, that's right. It's in my room. I didn't take my bag with me when I went promenading. So good role playing senses, right? And and of course, the butler doesn't have the revolver because all of their stuff is in their room. They didn't anticipate any of this. In D&D, you're like always wearing your armor. You go to lunch and you're wearing your armor. I mean, it just, and then you say you're not wearing your armor, and then somebody who's like 40 is like, nah, I always wearing my armor. Sometimes playing with adults can be a bit exhausting anyway, unless you play with real adults. So she's like getting this, and I say, okay, so what do you have? Now she's got the candle in her hand, right? And I'm thinking, okay, she's got the can. I didn't remind her. I thought she's got the candle in her hand. She's gonna burn whoever. She's gonna burn the Duchess. She's gonna burn, or the madam. She's gonna burn her butler. She immediately says to me, I have high heels on. And I know where this is going. And so she says, I take off my heels and I attack the person with my heels. I thought I was going to roll down laughing. I really had to restrain myself. This shy little girl is like, I'm attacking. So we go back, and we're in the library. And come down, and we sit down, and they know something's happened. And so I say, okay, well, what happens? And I look to the Countess, and she freezes. And I said, okay, now remember what we talked about. Before I roll something, you're gonna tell them all something. And I did my finger anyway, and she said, you all hate me. You all hate me. She didn't really get into it. Then she got into it. So I rolled the dice. It was her butler. And I said, what do you do? I run across the room and stab him with my shoe. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. We've spent an hour and 10 minutes for this build up. So I'm not going to go through each roll and how this, but I'm just going to tell you how it played out. It played out that she smashes the heel through the side of his mouth and knocks out some teeth. He's already frozen and stunned, knocks out teeth, blood is pouring out, teeth are falling out. She's got this shoe inside of his mouth that's stuck there. The madam can see what's going on, and I said, "What do you do?" And she she literally said, "I don't know what to do." So I just said, "Well, you're just there paralyzed. You don't know what to do." Because I was expecting her to go over and stop anyway. So the countess takes pulls. She says, "I pull out the shoe." I said, "Well, it's dripping blood." And I said, "Well, what do you do now?" And she says, "I said, you've come to your senses." And I'm expecting her to apologize to, to the butler or say sorry. No, I throw my shoe. And I said, "Okay, now I want you to think about this. I'll let you do it, but I want you to think about this. The door is closed. It's just going to bang." did, and she said, "Okay." And I said, "Remember, it's dripping blood. You've pulled it out." And I said, "There's squirting blood and the teeth and stuff." And so anyway, so she says, "I leave the room." So she leaves the room. And I'm like, WTF, right? So she leaves the room with her bloody shoe, and she's taken off the other shoe, but she didn't use it because I said, "You're smart enough to realize that you would have taken off both of your shoes. You would not have been like limping around. So you've taken off both shoes. You got one, and while you were screaming at them that they were going to kill you, he couldn't move. He was terrified, and I wasn't going to give him a roll. I figured that, she either misses or she hits, and I didn't think she'd hit, but she hit really well. So anyway, he unfortunately got broken, and so he had to roll for a broken test because she applied. I think she got 3 successes, and she applied her other successes to do more damage. And I'm there thinking to myself, "This is your own teammate. Like, what are you doing?" No. And she didn't mean anything against the young man. Like, it's not like they have animosity between them. She was just getting really into her character. So I'm like, okay. So he now is, and some of you may have seen this before, but you'll see that he's -1 observation. It's right next to the Vaesen. -1 in the purple. -1 observation, and he drools. -1 observation, and he drools. And this is his permanent feature. He took it like a champ. So I have rolled again to see if anybody's heard anything, and Sammy's heard something. So Sammy is coming up the stairs. The Countess is at the top of the stairs. Sammy is coming around, and he's like, "What the hell are you doing?" And he's screaming at her, and he's like, and I stopped the game and I said, "I want to check with you. How much violence do you want?" And so they were all, even the shy girl, yeah, this is cool. And so I said, "He's really like, he's about to run." So I go back to the other two and I say, "What do you do?" So the madam with the books wants to go under the bed and hide under the bed. But the first thing she does is, oh no, she was trying to heal the butler, but she failed her healing roll. And I said, "Well, but do you want to push her roll?" And she said, "No." And I said, "But do you realize what's going on here?" "No, I don't want to get a condition." So she shoves him in the armoire. There we go. You don't have to type it in anymore if you got this far. An armoire. So she pushes him in the armoire, closes the door. He's, of course, still kind of stunned. And she goes down flat on the ground and is trying to get under the bed. And that's where we left off. So I hope you've enjoyed this recollection of what's going on in my Vaesen game with these young people, the younger of the young people. So grade six and sevens are this bunch. So grade six and sevens. Uh, Very wonderful game. I really enjoy it. I can't tell you how much fun it is to play. And the other group is equally as colorful, and hopefully I'll describe that at a later date. But I've been sitting forever, and so I'm going to take a break and probably record tomorrow. So have fun. Take care. Great of you to watch me on this channel. See ya.